Good morning. Well, thank you, Hoka-Hey Singers, for wonderful performance and helping us immerse into the traditional ancestral homeland of Dakota Oyate, the original inhabitants and stewards of the land and the waterways of this area. Minnesota comes from the Dakota names for the area, Minnesota-Makoche, the land where the waters reflect the skies. Indeed, the cultural history of the Dakota people begins at the confluence of the Minnesota and the Mississippi rivers, a sacred place they call Bodote, and it's shared with the Ojibwe people, whose homeland extends northward from the city. The land of Dakota and Ojibwe people that now comprises the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area was unfairly ceded through the major land secession that coincided with the collapse of the fur trade. I'm grateful to have another opportunity to be here and to learn about the histories and the experiences of the Dakota people, and I hold myself accountable and ask you to do the same as a scholar and a leader in this community to recognize and counter the historical contemporary injustices, violence, and inequity that continue to impact Indigenous people today. Now, by now, you may be wondering, who is this tired-looking, black hair, but lots of gray in, Japanese man in gray striped three-piece suit with a pink tie doing on the stage? Well, what is he doing? Well, my name is Hiro, and on behalf of the 2024 ASHE President Jeni Hart, the conference committee, volunteers, and the staff, I'm here to formally open the 49th annual conference of the Association for the Study of Higher Education. Coming to the same city 2 years in a row gives us an opportunity to learn more about the locality and its complex relationships with the history. The thriving city in the Midwest we enjoy for the next few days is built by the unaddressed legacy of stolen labor of enslaved persons, predominantly of African descent. Though often viewed as distant from the institution of slavery, enslaved peoples were indeed exploited in the production of materials that helped to fund and fuel the economic expansion of Minneapolis. I ask you to join me in reflecting on our debt to those whose livelihood and humanity were consistently denied, including Dred Scott and Harriet Robinson Scott, enslaved in Minnesota at Fort Snelling, who sued for their freedom and were refused. I also acknowledge that the theft of labor is the theft of generational progress and mourn the loss of wealth, opportunity, and liberty experienced by those enslaved and their descendants, and I ask you to join me in committing to better understanding this history and our ongoing complicity in practices of labor extraction within our sector and beyond. Well, more from Tania and Tabitha, wonderful co-chairs of the Local and Community Engagement Committee shortly, but thank you both and the committee members this year and the last for providing us with these land and labor acknowledgements. I hope that many of you will take full advantage of the learning and the reflective opportunities that LCEC has put together for us, and engage with the history and the present so that we can do our part in shaping the future. Many thanks to every single one of you here with us in this room, long-time attendees, first-time attendees, and those who are attending for the first time in a while. Welcome home. With this year's theme, I Am a Scholar, the conference committee sought to create spaces that are not just spotlighting traditional manuscript-length papers. Scholarship and acts of scholarship can take many different forms. It is both and, but not either or. There are rooms for both. You'll hear from shortly as well, but Amanda, Gina, and the attendee engagement committee use the presidential sessions as places where we can showcase scholarly contributions of our community beyond the traditional paper format at the center stage. The program committee led by Jonathan and Rosie put together a feature session to highlight exemplary papers, but also created a process to recognize the contribution of proposal reviewers. Peer review is at the core of our scholarly discourse and the exchange of ideas and a part of being scholars. And not just the reviews, there are many different acts of scholarship that animate and put souls into otherwise inanimate objects, that is, academic papers. Because our work cannot speak for themselves, they need us, all of us, not just the authors, to have voices. Whether you are presenting your work here, having served as a reviewer, serving as a discussant or session chair, or asking questions or making statements in a form of questions, or even having hallway conversation about the work you just heard, thank you. Thank you for co-creating this space for scholars to come together. I also want to thank our sponsors. Thank you for your confidence in us and your commitment to the field, enabling many of us to pursue our scholarship. Finally, I want to thank each and all of the conference committee leadership team, and Alicia, Jason, and entire ASHE staff, as well as Jeni, for working with me this past year. All great things that are happening at this conference are to their and their committee's credits, and all shortcomings are mine. So if you have complaints, you can find the Asian guy with the gray hair. That said, now I'd like to invite these wonderful colleagues to say a few words about what they put together for you all for this conference. Thank you so much.
Buenos dias, Ash.
Buenos dias.
My name is Tabitha Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm a Latina woman of Puerto Rican descent with light brown skin and black hair, and I'm wearing glasses. I serve as the co-chair for the Local and Community Engagement Committee, and I'm here as a doctoral student at the University of Minnesota, which is on the ancestral and contemporary homelands of the Dakota people.
And good morning. My name is Tania Mitchell, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a black woman with short, close-cropped hair that is mostly black with a bit of silver in the front. I serve as the Associate Provost for Community Engagement at the University of Maryland, where I'm also a professor in the College of Education. The University of Maryland is on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people, and enslaved people of African descent farmed, paved, maintained, and developed the land on which the university stands. I am so lucky to serve as co-chair for local and community engagement alongside my good friend, Tabitha. We are excited to gather again here in Minneapolis, the city of lakes, for the 2024 ASHE Conference. Our committee's charge is to provide attendees with meaningful learning and reflection opportunities that center space and place through engagement with higher education institutions and Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color communities in the location of the annual conference.
We had an excellent team of committee members who are deeply passionate about community engagement and justice work. We would like to give them a heartfelt thanks. If you're here, please stand. To Dr. Gresham Collum, Dr. Orkide Mohajeni, Dr. Elaine Ward, Jess Proskin, and Travis Olson for their wisdom and contributions. Our committee has worked arduously to provide you with an intentional, reflective, and meaningful experience while in Minneapolis. We put in great effort to showcase the culture of the Twin Cities, as is demonstrated through art, justice, and resistance, through programs that elevate BIPOC community voices. Kicking off the conference yesterday, we'd like to thank our attendees for participating in our BIPOC vendor fair, which hosted 9 local BIPOC-owned businesses. So thank you for that. Additionally, we have an LCEC sponsored presidential session today at 10:30 following our opening in the Minneapolis Ballroom Salon G, titled Building New Foundations, Scholarship, Activism, and Praxis Within the Arts, with some representatives from our local BIPOC-owned community theater houses here in the Twin Cities, who will share their work about storytelling in theater as a form of knowledge making.
Throughout our time together this week, we have organized a guided experience to witness George Floyd Square with the Minnesota Agape Movement, a local organization dedicated to building an empowered community through advocacy, empowerment, and education. The remaining visits are today, Thursday, and tomorrow on Friday from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. On Friday afternoon, some conference participants will also travel to the newly renovated Minneapolis American Indian Center. We also encourage you to stop by the gallery space here in the hotel near the lobby to learn about the local organization Save the Boards, with an exhibit featuring local resistant art from the 2020 uprising following the murder of George Floyd. We will have a talkback session today at 4:00 p.m. in the gallery with the founder, Kenda Zellner-Smith, to learn more about how she began archiving artwork throughout the city.
We also invite you to read through part 2 of our Minneapolis-St. Paul syllabus to expand the notions on what it means to be a scholar by considering where the work happens, who does the work, and how that work is achieved beyond social identities, institution types, geographies, methodologies, epistemologies, and more. Moreover, as Minneapolis is an artistic and cultural hub in the Midwest, we hope you enjoy listening to the Minneapolis sound by checking out our curated Spotify playlist.
Responding to ASHE's commitment to do more than offer land acknowledgements, this year the association will make a contribution to 3 local organizations that support indigenous communities: the Minneapolis American Indian Center, the Minneapolis Native American Community Clinic, and Red Lake Nation Colleges. We invite you to make a donation to this fund by scanning the QR code on the screen or through the link in the Whova app. Is that how you say it, Whova? Okay. We acknowledge that material resources do not serve as absolution and are inadequate forms of reconciliation for addressing past and ongoing injustices endured by Indigenous peoples. Nevertheless, we find these initiatives to be an initial step in raising awareness, addressing the harm, repairing relationships, and experimenting with paths toward sustainable futures.
We have lots to do and see at the conference, both inside and outside of the hotel, and we look forward to engaging you in intentional conversations and purposeful practice. We also hope there will be lots of learning, community building, and some fun while you are here. Thank you.
And let's welcome our colleagues from Attendee Engagement.
Hello, ASHE community. Hello, good morning. My name is Gina Garcia. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a woman with dark brown or light brown skin and dark, long brown hair. I am wearing a brightly multicolored blazer, and my lips match with perfectly pink touch. I am a professor of education at UC Berkeley, which is on the ancestral Hushen Ohlone land, the original landscape of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. This year, I served as the co-chair for the Attendee Engagement Committee alongside my colleague and newly minted PhD, Dr. Amanda Carr. Like brand new. Congratulate her when you see her. The Attendee Engagement Committee's role is to develop initiatives that invite our attendees to enjoy the conference in creative and meaningful ways. We had the honor of doing this work alongside a phenomenal committee of ASHE members who reflect the breadth and depth of experience and expertise represented in ASHE. Our committee included scholars from different organizational and professional perspectives across the higher education ecosystem, including faculty, graduate students, postdoctoral scholars, and professionals from the policy and nonprofit sectors who worked hard to engage our attendees in innovative ways. We would like to thank them. Adeline DeAngelis, and if you're here, you can stand so we can acknowledge you. Jasmine Victor, Beth Nalik, Britt Williams, Jarrett Lujan, Kino Hurtado, Marjorie Dorme Williams, Andrea Rodriguez, Johnny Yang, and Georgina Rivera Singletary. We really leaned into this year's conference theme, I am a scholar, which allowed us to create spaces for ASHE scholars to learn, connect, think, act, and rest. We worked hard to define what it means to be a scholar beyond normative means. Yet we were also intentional to acknowledge the heaviness of current global, political, and social struggles and the ways they impact us as individuals and as a scholarly community. Our committee contemplated the role of activism in our scholarship, and we incorporated this important dimension of being a scholar as part of the conference experience. We also embraced the importance of pauses, rest, and connection to nurture our scholarly work. You will see these values reflected in our programming and presidential sessions. Collectively, we added these important aspects of being a scholar to our more traditional ways of engaging beyond the concurrent sessions. Finally, we leaned into ASHE's commitment to become a space that cultivates interdependence, access, and collaboration, and that prioritizes disability justice. This required us to think beyond access and to provide experiences that allow for deep reflection on how systems of oppression are at play within our conference space. We ask you to reflect on the access unstatement and the question, what does accessibility mean to you, and how are you creating the space you want to see?
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Carr and I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with curly, dark blonde hair. I'm a recent PhD graduate and senior research consultant at the University of Missouri, located on the unceded traditional lands of the Missouri, Oto, Chickasaw, Quapaw, Iowa, Illinois, and Osage peoples. It's been my great privilege to work with Gina Garcia as co-chair of the Attendee Engagement Committee. Our committee has built on the incredible work of last year's Wellness Committee to support holistic well-being across the conference experience. We challenge hegemonic structures of higher education that expect us to compartmentalize ourselves, and we define scholarly wellness as expansive, incorporating physical, political, social, emotional, environmental, and intellectual dimensions of our personal and professional lives. As Gina shared, this includes creating opportunities to take intentional pauses, rest, and connect with each other. Please engage in these opportunities in the ways that make the most sense to you. We hope you will leave the conference feeling cared for and in community. This year, we are bringing back some ASHE staples such as ashe.ws and expanded offerings of yoga ashe. Jeni, an ASHE member, whose scholarship centers on incorporating yoga principles in pursuit of scholarly well-being, will provide 4 sessions for us. We also have a sensory room and mindfulness spiritual space available for anyone who wishes to engage them. Our committee is also hosting a new event, Pause and Relax, an opportunity for you to step away from the conference and engage in some dog and cat cuddles. In honor of the conference theme, we have also created opportunities for connection and sense-making across your scholarly experiences. We're bringing back the Chat and Chill session on healthy and loving writing spaces and adding an additional art-based reflection session. We also want to invite all of you to engage in our interactive message board, coordinated by Andrea Rodriguez, which is on display here on the 3rd floor. Looking forward to next year and ASHE's 50th anniversary, this is a space for reflecting on what it means to be a scholar, past, present, and future. Please engage by writing, drawing, coloring, or responding to the other messages on the board. We will share themes from this message board during the closing session of the conference. Our committee has also organized 6 presidential sessions that represent the breadth and depth of scholarly expertise within the ASHE community, highlighting themes such as scholar activism, streetwise epistemologies, mid-career moves, policy intermediary work, and an ASHE podcast crossover, which is at the end of the day on Saturday, so please stay for that. We acknowledge the hard work of ASHE scholars to center values of inclusion, equity, and organizational justice. As we explore who we are as a scholarly organization, we invite you to consider what it means to engage meaningfully in the ASHE community by reflecting on the prompts here on the screen. Thank you, and enjoy your conference.
Welcome to ASHE 2024. My name is Alicia Castillo-Shrestha, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a person with black hair with a little white thrown in, glasses, I'm wearing a blue sweater. It's been my pleasure to serve as the ASHE Assistant and now Associate Director for Conference and Events, and I want to take a quick minute to share important information about 2 conference partnerships that support our collective goal to make our conference as inclusive and accessible as possible. Firstly, our conference ombuds program. I'd like to ask Mary and Colette to come to the stage. This year, yes. This year, ASHE has once again contracted with Mary Conger and Colette Carmouche to support all attendees. In this role, the ombuds support attendees with interpersonal issues, resource identification, and more. Mary and Colette are available by walk-in or appointment. Please check out the conference app for more information. Thank you. Next, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Autumn Wilkie. In a new position this year, the conference hired Dr. Autumn Wilkie as our ASHE accessibility consultant. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, Autumn's unable to be with us today, but we wish her well. In this position, Autumn has partnered with our staff to build upon the critical work done by volunteer leaders, including the 2023 Accessibility Committee. Autumn has had her work present at the conference in reaching out to those of you with accessibility needs and looking at our conference with inclusive eyes and building upon what currently existed and showcasing resources, best practices for future growth. If you need accessibility support at any point, please stop by the help desk just outside these doors here on the 3rd floor, or visit the app for additional pathways of communication. We thank Autumn for her work. Creating an inclusive and accessible conference takes a commitment by everyone in our community to support each other. Accessibility is for everyone, and we thank you all for being positive contributors to our collective spaces and experiences this week. Thank you so much.
Last but not least, good morning. Thank you again for joining us for the 49th ASHE Conference. My name is Rosie Perez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an Asian American woman of Filipino descent with long black hair, brown eyes, and brightly colored lipstick. Oh, thank you. I try. I'm an associate professor at the University of Michigan, which occupies the historic and contemporary homelands of the Anishinaabe, or Three Fires Confederacy, which includes the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations.
And good morning. My name is Jonathan Pryor. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am a white man with short, brownish blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm an associate professor at California State University, Fresno, which occupies the historic and contemporary homelands of the Yokuts and Manos peoples in the California Central Valley.
We are proud to have served as the program committee co-chairs for this year's convening. As we embarked on this journey together, we sought to embody this year's theme, I am a scholar, and worked in collaboration with this year's program committee to ensure we uplift and highlight the range of high-quality scholarship among the association's diverse membership. We hope the sessions and workshops throughout this year's virtual and in-person convening remind us of the many ways we can engage in scholarship and how our collective work is necessary to advance research, policy, and practice in higher education. As program committee co-chairs, we've had the pleasure of working with 36 ASHE colleagues, 36, that's a lot of folks, right, who've given time and energy to serve tirelessly over the past year to select the papers, posters, and works in progress submissions that will be presented at this year's conference. Taking on the commitment to serve as volunteers in this capacity helped us achieve our goals as a program committee, ensuring this year's conference highlights the scholarly contributions of our colleagues and offers timely and thought-provoking knowledge to advance our field of higher education. We want to take a moment to recognize the work of the 2024 Program Committee, whose names are listed on multiple slides, because there's so many of you, on the screen. If any members of this year's Program Committee are present, please make yourself known, or stand if you are able and be recognized. We are so grateful that you have shared your time, energy, and talent with the association in this way, and working alongside you over the past year has been a joy.
In addition to our incredible program committee team, we want to thank all of you who served as conference proposal reviewers for this year's conference. Your contributions are invaluable to the program committee and members whose work is uplifted through your thoughtful and timely peer review. We also wish to elevate several folks who the ASHE Program Committee has selected as our outstanding reviewers for the 2024 ASHE Conference. This distinction is a new form of recognition from the Program Committee that highlights the exceptional reviewer contributions. Section chairs nominated these colleagues based on their thoughtful, thorough, and constructive feedback on the ASHE 2024 program proposal submissions. So thank you for supporting our collective commitment to creating a strong 2024 ASHE Conference program and ensuring our colleagues receive substantive and supportive peer review feedback on their scholarly work. We would also like to thank those who have volunteered to serve as session chairs and discussants. Your efforts to ensure that sessions run smoothly and provide opportunities for rich discussion and robust feedback are greatly appreciated. And finally, another new feature we are excited to highlight on behalf of the 2024 Program Committee includes 4 featured sessions. We are proud to highlight these nominated works and hope you are able to engage with these strong contributions to the conference agenda. And as you move through the conference, we hope you have an enriching experience connecting with colleagues old and new. And we are hopeful that this year's conference will offer insightful and rejuvenating dialogues to further our collective work as scholars of higher education. Thank you.
It is an honor to be alongside my colleagues to celebrate, uplift, and introduce our mentor, colleague, and friend, ASHE 2024 President, Dr. Jeni Hart. We join you here this morning in large part due to the mentorship, advising, and guidance that Jeni has provided us as we endeavored into our respective roles in higher education. To quote Jeni, the intent of the 2024 conference theme, I am a scholar, is to not only consider our own identities, but to consider who we are as a scholarly community. I am Dr. Jennifer Fellabaum-Toston, and I am a scholar.
When we were made aware of the theme for this year's conference, it was not entirely surprising to us, as the ideas that underlie this theme are something Jeni has reinforced through her consistent mentorship and support throughout our careers. It is safe to say that many of us have felt at one time or another, for different reasons, excluded and as if we cannot be our full authentic selves in academic spaces, which for some of us might have included our professional associations. This underscores the need to proclaim how each of us, with our own unique voices, identities, and perspectives, is a scholar. I am Dr. Jonathan McElderry, and I am a scholar.
The acknowledgement of I am a scholar is a reminder, but also an affirmation that each of us belongs and deserves to be here. It also reflects Jeni's impact as a scholar and how she has contributed to our own understandings of what it means to be a scholar. We all approach our work from different lenses and experiences. Jeni has guided us to see how scholarship is not just one thing, but instead an opportunity to critique and advocate for a more just and equitable environment for the students and the communities that we serve. I am Doctora Stephanie Hernandez Rivera, and I am a scholar.
We see Jeni as a scholar not only for her record of publication, titles, and awards, or time in the field, but for her commitment towards supporting us in our journeys. Although this has taken a different shape and form for each person on this stage, Jeni has challenged us, held us accountable, provided honest assessments of our work, been transparent when she did not have the answers, and been open to and affirming of our ideas and our research. Jeni taught us that scholarship and being a scholar are not limited to our own contributions, but extend to how we support, guide, and mentor future and aspiring scholars. I am Dr. Eric Ludwig, and I am a scholar.
We can see ourselves as scholars in part because of Jeni's efforts, recognizing that we each contribute to the field in important and necessary ways. That regardless of the primary focus of our current work, be it research, teaching, consulting, administration, or mentorship, We all remain scholars who seek to improve the field of higher education and to serve the communities we are a part of and belong to. I am Dr. Jonathan Pryor, and I am a scholar. It is our privilege to welcome to the stage our 2024 ASHE President, Dr. Jeni Hart.
Happy ASHE, everybody. I'm trying not to cry, so I'm gonna, so give me a moment here. I'm Jeni Hart. I have brown hair that has a lot of what my hairdresser calls blonde highlights. I have green glasses, I'm a white woman, and I'm wearing a lot of pink. Please indulge me for a moment. I know you've heard about some of these folks and you've heard gratitude toward them already, but I want to take this opportunity to personally provide some thank yous to folks who have really made this year's presidency happen for me. So first, I want to acknowledge and thank my colleagues at the University of Missouri and all Mizzou graduate students, past and present, who are here today. So thank you. I also feel free to clap. I would also like to thank the conference committee leadership team and HERO, as well as all the conference pre-chairs, the pre-conference chairs, I'll get this out, for their hard work in making the event you have already experienced virtually, as well as through pre-conferences, and what you're about to experience happen. Thank you to the program committee for your hard work. For the local and community engagement committee. For the attendee engagement committee. And for puppies and kittens, I might add. This year, for the first time, we have hired an accessibility coordinator, Autumn Wilkie. Autumn has supported the conference committee to center disability justice throughout the conference. Definitely. I also want to thank our ombuds for the work that they are doing to support our community while we're here at ASHE. I will say more about them in a little bit. Thank you to the Service Presidential Commission that was led by LaShawn Washington and Margaret Salee for doing the work to center service and help us think critically about what service means as a professional organization and in our communities. Thank you also to the Artificial Intelligence Presidential Commission that was led by Ben Selznick and Laura Smithers. And I hope you join both of these commissions for their sessions throughout the conference to really engage with them about the work that they have done to serve the association. Thank you to our podcast hosts extraordinaire, Royale Johnson and Felicia Commodore, who embraced the conference theme, I Am a Scholar, and brought folks together to reflect on how they embody their scholarly identities, and to those who were guests on this year's podcast. Thank you. We will be able to relive the conference theme when all episodes drop in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. Thank you to Rachel Aho, ACPA President, who is attending the ASHE conference. Rachel served as my partner for the ACPA ASHE Presidential Symposium, as well as to Brian Hopkins, Jason Gilbeau, for their organizational guidance, and to all of our panelists. Thank you to all those who have accepted invitations to serve the association and to all of you for being here. Over the past year, you've received several messages from me and the board acknowledging the work we must do as an association to confront anti-Blackness and misogynoir and to hold ourselves accountable when our actions violate ASHE's values. This work is ongoing, and I want to highlight a few folks who have been critical partners. First, thank you to the Inclusion, Equity, and Organizational Diversity Committee for engaging disability justice as part of their ongoing work, and for leading a survey and conducting focus groups with Black women leaders in ASHE to learn more about Black women's experiences in the association. In addition, they have a presidential session during the conference to continue these conversations and identify ways we can and must do better to be an inclusive and equitable community. Thank you to the editorial board of the Review of Higher Education and its editors, Penny Pasquay and Tom Nelson Laird, for their leadership, contacting and communicating with all living past ASHE presidents whose addresses were not published in the review, crafting meaningful errata for those missing addresses, finalizing copy editing and publication for 3 of the missing addresses, and establishing task forces to critically think about efforts to ensure epistemic justice and the erasure of anti-Blackness and gendered racism in the journal. Thank you again to the Review of Higher Education Board and the Publication Committee, who are reviewing policies and practices toward equity and epistemic justice. Thank you to my colleagues on the Executive Committee and ASHE Board for the additional hours we spent to prioritize these issues and the individuals affected by them. Thank you again to the conference ombuds, Mary Bliss Conger and Colette Carmouche. They are a confidential resource for all attendees who want to discuss concerns or challenges experienced while at the conference. They will listen and help you identify options and resources to resolve issues. The ombuds are available for confidential individual and small group conversations, including those related to the concerns of anti-Blackness broadly and the treatment of Black women specifically within the association, as well as any other identity-based concerns or experiences. And finally, thank you to the ASHE staff, Briante Meeks, Erin Satterwhite-David, Naomi Rodriguez, Alicia Castillo-Shrestha, Jason Gilbo, for your professionalism and unwavering commitment to the association during times of great uncertainty, stress, and struggle. Like at any awards ceremony, I'm sure I forgot to thank many more folks who have supported me over the past year, and if I continue on my gratitude tour, I may be played off the stage. However, I wanted to take time to express my sincere gratitude because I am a scholar because of every individual who has been part of my scholarly journey, from those previously acknowledged to everyone who has engaged with me as I played with ideas, to anonymous reviewers and editors, to anyone who has formally or informally taught, mentored, and advised me, and to everyone I have cited in my publications and presentations, including those with whom I disagree. All right, now we're going to get down to business. A year ago at ASHE, and in the theme announcement, I shared what is now a portion of the introduction to my address today, to explicate how I came to and identify with the theme of the conference, I am a scholar. I share it again today because it helps to contextualize the entirety of my remarks. As an early career scholar, I worked at a regional state university. I remember my first ASHE as an assistant professor, although it was not my first ASHE, but my first ASHE as an assistant professor. I introduced myself to colleagues who would ask where I worked. Upon sharing, many would dismiss me and walk away. Others were more subtle, but the message was the same. I did not have the right pedigree. I was not an important scholar, or maybe even a scholar at all. The following year, I moved to another university, a large research university that was a member of the AAU. What a difference a year made. I introduced myself to colleagues who again asked where I worked. People were interested in what I was bringing to ASHE and what I had to share with the community as a scholar. These experiences made me reflect on what it means to be a scholar and who earned that status. Did I really become more scholarly in a year? These questions haunted me so much that I wanted to reflect upon them with the ASHE community, which brought me to the conference theme. The intent, as Jennifer mentioned, of the 2024 conference theme, I Am a Scholar, is not only to consider our identities as scholars, but to consider who we are as a scholarly community. If you were able to attend the community meeting last year, you will recall that we developed a word cloud of what it means to be a scholar. I am sharing it again as a reminder of how we identified individually and collectively as scholars and hope that it will ground us as we continue our scholarly journeys. The theme is not about navel-gazing, something for which many of us are unfairly critiqued in our work, nor is it a way to give everybody a participation ribbon. Being a scholar is an act of labor, resistance, connection, and knowledge generation. Further, this is a project to welcome and learn from a community of scholars from a variety of institution types, associations, policy settings, unique identities, geographies, methodologies, epistemologies, positions within and beyond academe, and myriad other locations. Collectively, we can stake our claim as scholars who continue to transform higher education through the work that we do. Given the hostile climate toward higher education, particularly in the United States, including anti-DEI legislation in many states, questions about whether higher education is necessary, with a very specific attention toward graduate education, threats to free speech and academic freedom, in part under the guise of institutional neutrality, our work remains essential, and we have a responsibility to be accessible advocates for higher education as a public good. We must also acknowledge the tension that exists between neoliberal ideas of scholarly production and what role a conference plays in this. And at the same time, we hope to create a conference beyond reporting findings that center on dialogue, exchanging ideas, learning from one another, and pushing ourselves to consider perspectives that may challenge our own. One moment, please. Throughout this address, I will share stories of my own scholarly becoming, accompanied by some photos representing those times in my journey. I will share multiple moments, like the experience I shared at the beginning of this address, when I questioned whether I could be, should be, or was a scholar. I do so to highlight the messages that persist in academe, in the field, and even in ASHE, that leave many of us to question whether we belong and are worthy of the title of scholar. I do so also to critique the structures that we can work to change so that we can celebrate our scholarly identities without question. I entered my doctoral program after my master's degree and about a decade as a student affairs educator. I came to doctoral education in part because as a practitioner, I watched colleagues become frustrated, wanting their student affairs practice to be appreciated for what it was, a complement, not a competition to the academic mission. I found that many of my peers did not learn about power, faculty work, and agency in many master's programs at the time, and I wanted to be able to make a difference to the field by reshaping curriculum. And at that time, the message was clear. Faculty were scholars, and student affairs educators were not. So until I became a faculty member myself, I did not have the power to make a difference. Those who work in higher education beyond the classroom, including student affairs, make a difference in the lives of students on our campus and in the lives of those doing this essential work. There is ample scholarship by many in this room and throughout the field to support this. Practitioners' lived experiences unearth the questions with which we wrestle in practice and theory. As examples, Jonathan Pryor identified two unique ways higher education professionals engaged in queer leadership, advancing Adriana Kezar and Jamie Lester's theory of grassroots leadership. Rosie Perez showed us through her longitudinal work with student affairs educators how their self-authorship shifts over time. She found that validating voice matters, reminding us of the harm we cause in not acknowledging their contributions. And similarly, Jonathan McElderry and Stephanie Hernandez Rivera spoke to the harm institutional dynamics caused them in their roles as administrators, working with student activists fighting for racial justice. In their lived experiences must be upheld as scholarly examples of what higher education is, could be, and should be. Emphasizing the important role of practitioners and policymakers in scholarship and challenging the idea of higher education research for research's sake, Jelena Brankovic and Brendan Cantwell argued that research in higher education contributes to knowledge in both epistemic and pragmatic ways. Scholars in the field should contribute to both the scientific community and the reality that the field exists because of policy and practice. In this way, then, we are not only doing work for others to learn from and eventually cite, but also to engage policymakers and practitioners to advance the work of the institute at the institutional level. Their knowledge is essential. Moreover, if we're not weaving together theory and practice, or theorists and practitioners, as D.L. Stewart reminded us, our work doesn't matter. Celebrating the scholarly contributions of student affairs educators and pushing for a more inclusive notion of scholar, Keith Edwards, Heather Shea, Glenn de Guzman, Rochelle Pope, Mamta Akapati, and Susana Munoz argued that podcasts led by student affairs educators are public scholarship. In their podcast, Student Affairs Now, the hosts and guests come together to create knowledge for listeners. They have also published this translational educational research in the Journal of College Student Development. While some may still argue that the journal is more scholarly than the podcast, we need to look at the evidence. They've had more than 120,000 downloads and 50,000 views on YouTube in the first 3 years of their podcast. Yeah. The impact of the podcast, while not included in the all-important H-index, clearly demonstrates meaningful contributions to the field of higher education. And I know you're all looking up what your H-index is now, right? When I entered my doctoral program, I was one of very few peers who was a full-time student and interested in pursuing the professoriate. I had more time and access to the faculty in my program, and probably more attention. Perhaps this was because I was perceived to be on track to be a scholar, or maybe it was just that I was around much more than some of my peers could be. I recognize my privilege, including the ability to attend the University of Arizona and learn from some of the best scholars in the field. I am the scholar I am today because of them, including Sheila Slaughter, Scott Thomas, Doug Woodard, John Cheslock, and John Levin. My advisor and mentor was and is Gary Rhodes, to whom I owe much gratitude. And yet, in a time dedicated to becoming a scholar, I confronted feelings of being an imposter. I questioned whether I should walk away from my PhD program, whether I was good enough to have a faculty position, whether I would ever have an article accepted. To be clear, no one told me I was not good enough, but the feeling was very real. In class one day, I even asked Scott Thomas when I would stop feeling like an imposter, a fraud. He jokingly said, never. But let's be honest, there is a bit of truth in that response. Nearly 80% of people have experienced those feelings. Kevin Coakley, a counseling psychologist, is among the first to empirically understand imposter phenomenon, originally defined in 1978 as an internal experience of intellectual phonies. Coakley's use of phenomenon is an intentional shift away from imposter syndrome, which pathologizes these feelings and blames the individual, not the system that creates it. Moreover, much like second-wave feminism, imposter syndrome is perceived as primarily a white woman's concern. Coakley argued that it is also a racialized phenomenon, that as a white woman, I do not experience in the same way. When you work as a faculty in the United States, this does not come as a surprise. There are many scholars in our field who study the experiences of minoritized faculty whose findings continue to reinforce the systemic racism and misogynoir in academia, including Natasha Krum, Tamika Ferguson, Stacey D. Garrett, Kimberly Griffin, Heather Shotton, and Ruth Lopez. Triangulating decades of qualitative studies, Theodore Masters Wag and colleagues found different promotion and tenure outcomes for racially minoritized faculty compared to white faculty. Studying over 1,500 tenure and promotion cases from 5 universities, they found a double standard in how research metrics were evaluating, leading to minoritized faculty receiving 7% more negative votes at the college level and 44% fewer unanimous tenure and promotion decisions. Further, women of color were most likely to experience double standards related to research productivity. These findings continue to reinforce how academic systems breed racialized imposter phenomena. In this, Coakley is advancing the conversation in important ways that allow us to name and nuance experiences that threaten our identities as scholars. I'm a tenure stream faculty member. I worked hard to create a portfolio that required the uncomfortable process of describing my accomplishments. And to be fair, I understood what was expected of me. To be considered a tenurable faculty member, I fed into the productivity combine to have enough single and first authored publications in the best journals, grant activity, and conference presentations. I could also demonstrate that my teaching was good enough and sat on some committees. When I submitted my portfolio, I was confident that I met the bar for tenure at the University of Missouri. The process at Mizzou, not unsimilar from many other institutions, required evaluation by my department, chair, college, dean, and university committee before it was sent to the provost and president. I progressed positively through the process until the university faculty committee. At that time, anyone in the evaluation process for which the committee had questions about their materials were called to meet with them and received a letter that indicated that the committee had voted no on their tenure, which is what happened in my case. This was a strong signal that I was not considered a scholar or scholarly enough. I met with the university committee, accompanied by my chair, dean, and 2 full professors. The committee asked very few questions of me, directing them to my chair and dean instead. Clearly, I was not the scholar in the room. Then, the line of questioning turned to the research methods I used most in my work. This also cut to the core of my identity as a feminist, as there is a through line between my epistemological, theoretical, and methodological identities. I left the hearing exhausted, longing for the humanization of higher education that Joy Gaston Gales argued for in her ASHE presidential address. Although I was successful and the university overturned their initial vote, the experience left a lasting impact on my confidence as a scholar. In his presidential address, D.L. Stewart critiqued Boyer's scholarship of discovery as rooted in settler colonialism, positioning the researcher or scholar with the power and the expert who reports the big T truth. The message I took away from my tenure case was that the scholarship of discovery was what a deserving scholar did. And Stewart continued, if the scholarship of discovery does harm, then it is essential to exercise it. He provided an alternative conceptualizing scholarship of ideation, or the development of ideas and concepts. I believe this type of scholarship is more generative, necessary, and warrants those of us who are faculty to legitimate it in our policies and practices. It also has the potential to include and celebrate practitioners as knowledge producers and holders in the ways scholarship of discovery does not. However, I am left wondering what is salvageable in the scholarship of discovery, and for the scholars of discovery. Is there any way to conduct the scholarship of discovery, eliminate damage and harm, and center humanity? Its history makes it difficult, if not impossible, to imagine this. Thus, we may need an additional reconceptualization of the scholarship of discovery. Ana Martinez Aleman, Brian Pusser, and Estela Ben-Simon's edited text, Critical Approaches to the Study of Higher Education, A Practical Introduction, provides rich insights toward this notion. Amanda Tashin and Z. Nicolazzo, as well as the collaborators in their book, Weaving and Otherwise, In Relation Methodological Practice, pushes us even further to decolonize research. Also, critical quantitative scholars, for example, Ryan Wells, Jay Garvey, Krista Winkler, Annie Wooford, and Nicole Garcia, and critical qualitative scholars such as Penny Pasque, Rosanna Carducci, Tania Mitchell, Natasha Kroom, and Leslie Gonzalez may help us develop this further. I am also reminded of the contributions first made by their dissertation research, by Dajane Palmer's use of sister circle methods, Stephanie Hernandez Rivera's engagement with Platicas and Testimonios, and Amanda Carr's use of body mapping and embodiment work. Methods like these reject extraction and work to eliminate harm of minoritized communities. Rather, they acknowledge the expert is the community, akin to Stewart's call for the scholarship of ideation. This work intentionally incorporates and elevates the knowledge, wisdom, and expertise of others' lived experiences. However, as Lori Patton Davis pushed us to consider in her presidential address, the problem may not rest in a particular method. Instead, the problem is the discourse that some methods lead us to work that is superior. There is no doubt that in academia, the scientific method and reproducibility remain the gold standard. This is reinforced by the retraction of a recent article in Nature Human Behavior that celebrated that reproducibility was no longer in crisis. Ironically, the study they published could not be reproduced because of incomplete reporting of data and analysis. So as scholars, we are told that we must continue to search for the elusive reproducibility. Or instead, the message is that there are other legitimate and responsive approaches to scholarship that lead us to new ideas, concepts, theories, policy, and practice. To be clear, reproducibility is not a terrible scientific concept. It suggests that we must be transparent, and it reinforces that work must be both rigorous and trustworthy. However, the discourse surrounding it reinforces a hierarchy of epistemologies and methodologies. For those of us, like myself, whose epistemological and methodological approaches are rooted in social constructivism, critical qualitative design, and the rejection of a grand narrative or big T truth, reproducibility will always remain elusive and our scholarly identities marginalized. This should not be, as Gary Rhodes argued, the higher education we choose. Instead, I join Leslie Gonzalez in pressing for opportunities to foster epistemic justice in the academy, rewarding and making legitimate space for knowledges that have been marginalized. A few years after I received tenure, I was asked to serve as department chair. As someone who studied faculty work and systems and structures that mutually shaped them, taking on this role came with risk regarding my ability to keep the productivity train on its tracks. Time is finite, after all. Although relatively recently tenured, I was the most senior person in the department, and I agreed to the role. Almost overnight, the relationships shifted between me and my colleagues. I was on the dark side. I was the them to the us and them. Much like my early experience at ASHE, when others, and I, questioned if I was a scholar, I again questioned my scholarly identity. I continued to publish and present work toward becoming a full professor, but it was largely in the shadows and on borrowed time. In 2016, when I was in the process to be promoted to full, I moved to the graduate school. Time to read and write became even more challenging, especially because I did not want to give into the palpable productivity and neoliberal cultures and the ranking regime that Leslie Gonzalez and Anne-Marie Nunez described. Yet, did this quest once again diminish my scholarly identity? I wanted a more holistic life, one modeled by Gary Rhodes when I was applying to PhD programs. As an aside, one of the deciding factors in choosing to study at the University of Arizona was the time Gary took to come to campus over winter break to meet with me, but only after he spent time with his daughter horseback riding. I never left the ASHE community. It was my lifeline to my scholarly identity, even if I didn't feel very scholarly. I stayed connected to the field as a journal editor, reviewer, and advisor. I'm indebted to every student with whom I've had the privilege to work as a dissertation, thesis, or project chair, and as a committee member throughout my career. They have kept me intellectually curious and tethered to new ideas and methodologies. You've had the opportunity to meet some of them today: Jennifer Fellabaum-Toston, Stephanie Hernandez-Rivera, Eric Ludwig, Jonathan McElderry, and Jonathan Pryor. As an administrator, I also became part of a new community and associations that brought my positionality as a higher ed scholar to those spaces and places. Over time, I also found more folks I knew from ASHE in these spaces. They are scholarly spaces, not only because those of us in them, but because of the very nature of the work that comes from them, including reports, practice, policy briefs, research studies, and advocacy work. However, the coupling between these organizations and ASHE is loose and largely unidirectional. Yet I've had rich opportunities to collaborate and learn from these organizations to produce new ideas, knowledge, and transform our institutions from many angles. For example, the Council of Graduate Schools, CGS, is where I met Hiro Okahana and continued my connection with Mizzou grad Anyu Zhao. I worked in the same administrative landscape as higher ed scholars Natasha Kroom, Susan Marine, Tiffany Davis, Melissa McDaniels, Krista Porter, Joy Williamson-Lott, and Stephen John Quay. CGS has benefited from the publications and presentations of Julie Passault, Liliana Garces, Lorella Espinoza, Ann Austin, Kimberly Griffin, Millie Garcia, Phil Altbach, Roshni Jahangir, David Wynn, Jason Wallace, among others. The potential for the future of what we know, what we do, and how we argue for the value of higher education is strengthened by our connection with associations like CGS, ACPA, NASPA, American Association for the Advancement of Science, International Association of Universities, National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Ed, American Council on Education, the National Academies, and so many others. The scholarly field of higher education benefits from a tighter coupling and multi-directional relationship. There are many messages that the academic machine wants us to embrace. Among them, we must be acknowledged as scholars within our institution, largely if we're tenure-streamed or tenured, unless you move into academic administration. And yet, there's a contradiction in that we are often not considered expert in our own universities. How many times have you been in meetings when the plan is to hire a consultant? Likely one of us in the room, right? From another institution, despite our local expertise. At the same time, we must ask whether the institution would recognize the work you would do as scholarship, a point against academic administration and service as legitimate scholarly work. Likewise, the idea that hiring our own remains taboo on many campuses, as if a graduate cannot be independent from their mentors and have fresh ideas and perspectives unless they spend time elsewhere first, even if they are the ideal scholar for the job. My scholarly journey brings me here today, where I stand before you as the president of ASHE. I am grateful and humbled, and I am a scholar. Despite systems that are in place that make us question our scholarly selves, becoming a scholar and being in a scholarly community should be restorative. We are in an applied, and as Chris Wren argued, a low consensus field. Perhaps that makes our umbrella of scholars bigger than other fields. This, of course, means that in some contexts we lose the prestige game. But if we are concerned about that, are we not complicit in reinforcing the neoliberal forces so many of us critique? Instead, we must work as a community to dismantle these hierarchies and make room for all scholars. We must proudly and with confidence acknowledge that we are scholars. We each have something to contribute to the field of higher education that has value and should be valued. we must work hard to think about who is harmed and who benefits from the scholarship of service, activism, ideation, mentoring, teaching, policy, and practice. Moreover, if inclusion, equity, and organizational diversity are among our values, we must be willing to consider the ways in which assumptions about who can and should be a scholar limit what we do and can accomplish as a scholarly community. We must critically interrogate the exclusionary practices in which we engage regarding becoming a scholar and how those practices compromise the integrity of our scholarship. I believe we become better scholars by doing so, and in that way, we create better scholarship. Higher education and the communities in which we work and live are faced with vexing, complex, and wicked problems. We can anticipate some of the problems ahead of us in light of the outcome of the most recent US presidential election, from which we must now learn about the WWE, apparently. So I'm gonna take up wrestling, I guess. Many of which we are already facing and are likely to escalate. For example, we should prepare for anti-Black racism and anti-DEI legislation to be valorized. Risks to the futures of DACA recipients, elimination of rights for trans folks and the LGBT community, fewer protections against sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and the economic equality in our workplaces and classrooms, the devaluation of science, further limits to access and equity in our institutions, the decline in numbers of international scholars on our campus, increases in negative perception of the value and public good benefits of higher education, decreases in federal funding to higher education, including financial aid, and the precarity of academic freedom and tenure, among many others. We cannot be complacent. Our work continues to evidence the real consequences of policy decisions that lie ahead of us. We need all our scholarly selves to collectively find solutions and actively work toward our purpose and the purposes of higher education. Before I leave the stage, I want to express my deep gratitude to Stephanie Hernandez Rivera, Amy Metcalf, Hiro Okahana, Amanda Carr, James Soto Anthony, and Margaret Salee, and all those who are cited and inspired this address. Thank you very much.